Hi, welcome to this very epic video where I explain a topic that you probably don't care about. So when you think of iconic European vehicle brands, you probably think German precision, Italian flair, maybe Swedish safety. But what if I told you that one of the most influential bus manufacturers in the world came from Hungary and that they helped move millions across continents for decades? This is the story of Ikarus, the boxy bus legend that dominated the streets of Eastern Europe, rolled through Africa, Asia, and even Latin America, and somehow didn't completely vanish. The story starts in 1895 in Budapest, still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Uri brothers' workshop was turning out elegant horse-drawn carriages, pretty standard for the time. But as the 20th century rolled in, the company turned to making car bodies. By the 1930s they were making entire vehicle bodies, a bold leap at the time. Then came World War II. After the devastation, Hungary, like much of Eastern Europe, was swept into the orbit of the Soviet Union. In 1948, the Uri works were nationalized, and in 1949, a new name appeared, Ikarus Karosszéria és Járműgyár, or just Ikarus. Named after the mythological figure Ikarus, you know, the guy who flew too close to the sun. The name might have seemed poetic, but ironically also foreshadowed what was to come decades later. Now we're in the 1970s. The Ikarus 200 series was launched in 1971, and it's basically the IKEA of buses. One frame, infinite chaos. You want a city bus? Done. A coach? We got you. The 200 series was absolutely everything at the same time. Let's look at a few key models. The 260, the backbone of city fleets, 11 meters long, 3 doors, diesel engine, no nonsense, no frills, a commuter's daily companion. The 280, the articulated version. It was basically two 260s joined together. These were a common sight on major urban routes, capable of carrying over 160 passengers at peak capacity. The 250 and 256, coaches for long distance journeys. These were more comfortable, relatively speaking, and used for intercity travel tours, sometimes international routes in Eastern Europe. And the trolleybus versions, identical bodies, but instead of diesel engines, they run on electricity via dual overhead wires. These were widely used in cities like Budapest, Sofia, and Minsk. These buses were everywhere. They exported to over 50 countries like the Soviet Union, Poland, Germany, and even the US. They were pumping out more than 13,000 units per year at their peak. If you ever rode one of these buses, you'll remember it. The Ikarus experience was unforgettable. Vinyl seats, bare steel floors, the smell of diesel mixed with cold air in the winter, loud engines, clunky doors, and suspension that could throw you in the sky if you hit a pothole at speed. These were not luxury vehicles, but they were honest, built to last, easy to maintain, and in many cases kept running for 30, 40, even 50 years with minimal upgrades. Mechanics loved them, transit agencies loved their simplicity, and passengers tolerated them. But they became a part of everyday life. Okay, the 90s roll around. Communism ceases to exist in Europe and Ikarus suddenly has to deal with capitalism. No more state contracts, no more guaranteed markets. Ikarus has to modernize fast. Enter the 400 series, launched in 1989, with sleeker designs, lower floors, and features like working air conditioning. Revolutionary. These were the members of the 400 team. The Ikarus 405 was a tiny little guy, a midi-bus made for narrower streets or lower demand routes. Think of it as the compact car of the Ikarus lineup. The 412 was the low-floor single-unit model that aimed to meet rising accessibility standards. It had a more rounded, more modern design and saw service in cities like Budapest and Debrecen. Then there was the 415, the standard full-size model. It replaced the old 260s and was super common in Hungary during the 90s and the 2000s. I actually have a plushie of this one at home. The 435 was the big articulated version, built for busy urban corridors, basically the successor of the iconic 280. And don't forget the 417, which was another articulated bus designed for higher capacity routes in cities like Wuppertal, Germany. Kind of rare, but cool if you ever spotted one. They even tried at Western style exports, and some models were sold in Germany, Finland, and even the UK, but modernization came too slowly. The company's infrastructure was still outdated, and foreign investment wasn't enough to bring it up to par, and travel agencies were slowly starting to ditch these buses with time. Ikarus had been dabbling in electric propulsion since the 1960s. They had worked with manufacturers like Ganz and Skoda to produce trolleybuses. The 280T was a major player, combining the successful 280 chassis with electric gear. These trolleybuses served in cities like Belgrade, Tashkent, and a few of them are still roaming the streets here in Budapest. Like this one, number 229, which is my favorite for some reason. It's been rolling around Budapest all the way since 1988. Now, while the 200 series trolleybuses carried much of the load through the 70s and 80s, they didn't stop there. When they introduced the more modern 400 series, they followed up with updated electric versions as well, like the 412T and the 435T. The 412T was a sleek, low-floor trolleybus designed for cities that wanted quiet, modern public transport without ditching their overhead wire networks. It was compact, accessible, and more passenger-friendly than its 200 series predecessors. The 435T, on the other hand, was the heavy hitter. This was a full 18-meter articulated beast, capable of carrying large crowds in dense urban areas. It had a more refined electrical system, often paired with Ganz or Skoda tech, and offered a smoother acceleration and a quieter ride. Some of these models were even exported to places like Riga, Sofia, and Bucharest, where electric transport was still king. They represented a push by Ikarus to bring trolleybuses into the modern era, combining the practicality of the old with the comfort and efficiency expected in the new. Despite their efforts, Ikarus couldn't compete with the global players like MAN, Volvo, or Mercedes-Benz. The company changed hands multiple times, but by 2003, production ceased. For many, this is an end of an era. Cities began retiring their Ikarus fleets, often replacing them with Western low-floor models. But while the buses faded from service, their cultural impact remained. So, Ikarus disappears in the early 2000s, right? Feels like the end of the road. But just like those buses that kept rattling down side streets long after retirement, Ikarus refused to stay parked. In the late 2010s, the Ikarus name began quietly resurfacing, this time with an eye on the future. The world has changed. Diesel was on its way out, cities were going electric, and suddenly, the Ikarus brand had a chance to reinvent itself. In partnership with Electrobus Europe, a new era began. The result, the Ikarus 120e, a fully electric low-floor city bus that basically said, hey, we can be clean, green, and still Hungarian. The 120e featured modern tech across the board, fast charging, regenerative braking, a 300-kilometer range under ideal conditions, and the kind of smooth, quiet ride you could never dream of on a 280. But here's the thing, even with all this futuristic hardware, the 120e still looks like an Ikarus. That slightly boxy silhouette, the no-nonsense exterior, it's got just enough old-school DNA to make transit nerds like me tear up a little. Hungarian cities like Székesfehérvár and Keszthely have already started trialing the new models, and while it's not mass production on the scale of the Cold War glory days, it's a serious step forward, and a hopeful one. Because Ikarus isn't just a brand, it's a memory for millions of people. It's the sound of your commute, the bus you missed, the one you ran for in the rain. It's what took kids to school, workers to factories, and grandparents to the market. It's the steel backbone of everyday life for decades. Transit museums across Europe have preserved dozens of classic Ikarus buses. Private collectors lovingly restore them. Facebook groups and YouTube channels keep the culture alive. And if you're lucky, you'll still spot a lovingly maintained 260 or 280 chugging along in a small town somewhere, refusing to die. So the next time you hop on a bus, take a second to appreciate how far we've come, and how much of it was paved by Hungarian engineering and a dream of carrying the world, one squeaky suspension at a time. That's the story of Ikarus, a bus that flew too close to the sun, then came back with solar panels. Csak kísértetek vagyunk, de